All right, and we are live, joined by the great Jeremy Fowler of ESPN, and we're going to be talking draft class, free agency. We're not going to talk Jets. We made an agreement before the interview. We're not going to talk too much Jets.
I'm going to ask him a Jets question or two, though.
Frank is gonna ask
I
a
can't
Jets
help
question.
myself.
You got to add something.
But Jeremy, how we doing?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me. Good to pop in here.
Thanks, Jeremy.
So Frank, I'll let you lead it off.
No, Jeremy, we're talking a lot about the NFL Combine, prospects, where we think certain players will go and whatnot. But I want to start with free agency. Free agency is before the draft. I want to get into free agency and just off the bat.
I love free agency.
I do too.
Love it.
I prefer it almost
So
over
do
the
Jets
draft.
fans.
Yeah. Combine gets kind of annoying. It's the same thing over and over again. Indy's a cool city, though, so I like coming here. It's fun, good times.
No doubt.
But let's get to free agency. One thing that you're hearing, a rumor, something you think could happen, a splash signing, anything you got for us?
Oof.
Getting a little juicy. We're starting
rumors,
hot.
Splash signings. So, I mean, look, I think if Cousins can get out of Minnesota, I think Atlanta jumps all over that. I do. That would be the perfect fit. Minnesota's certainly going to try to shake this out and see if they can come to a common ground. I think most people expect him to stay there, but look, this is a top 10 to 12 quarterback who's available, right? And that doesn't happen very often. So that could happen. My radar's on a guy like Christian Wilkins. I don't think he's going to get franchise tag, which kind of surprised me coming into the week.
Interesting.
Now, Miami's kind of conveying that all options are still on the table, so maybe they will, but I don't think so, which creates an interesting dynamic because you got, high-end player who's now available in the middle of a defense. So
now you mentioned Minnesota.
Like Cleveland, Houston. Be a lot of teams that'd be like, oh, now we have more options inside. Yeah. Maybe we'll spend some money, take a big swing.
Yeah.
When you mentioned the Vikings, if Kirk doesn't come back, they were very aggressive last year trying to trade up for Anthony Richardson. Now, obviously, the Colts were locked in on him as their guy, but they were offering a plethora of first-round picks. Let's say a team like New England is exploring the possibility of trading out. Could you see Minnesota sending another aggressive offer to move up for one of those blue-chip quarterbacks?
So, yeah, depending on how things fall, right? I'll say this, I don't dissuade the notion that Minnesota has been curious about taking a swing, right, on a young guy that they can build around at some point. But they've also had a very good quarterback in their building that they're happy with, who was probably playing the best football of his career. So that's sort of a major caveat in that discussion that maybe supersedes all that.
Mm-hmm.
But if Cousins is out, let's say, if we're playing that game, I absolutely think they would entertain it. Assuming they have a really high grade on Drake Maye, Jayden Daniels, one of those two, assuming they're available. So, yeah, the short answer is yes. I don't know if they would move up that far. That's a lot. 11-3, 11-2. That can be a stretch depending on your threshold. I don't know that Kwesi, the GM, would want to give up that much capital to do it.
This Jayden Daniels, Drake Maye conversation, I posted about it a few days ago. I'm like, you know what? Looking at these two on tape, not that I'm some scout or something, but I'm like, you know what? I think Jayden Daniels is better. I just do. I think he does everything at a higher level than Drake Maye. I think he has a little bit more, has much more upside, but I think he has a little bit more to his game when it comes to looking into the future and what a guy could become. Drake Maye to me reminds me a little bit of almost a Jordan Love out of college, where he can do a little bit of everything, but he has to refine his skill set, whereas Daniels seems like he just pops. Do you buy into this Jayden Daniels going 2 right now that seems to be getting a lot of buzz, or do you still think it's Drake at 2 like it's been for the last couple months?
Like, if I just had to lean on conversations I've had with teams, I would lean slightly toward Drake still being at 2, but okay. I do think that depending on who you talk to, there's some level of people being torn on that. It's really is a pick your flavor type thing that only Washington can decide, and they're not going to tip their hand on that. Clearly, Adam Peters, the new GM, wouldn't have taken that job unless he knew, okay, the quarterback available to is going to be my guy that I love, right?
Yeah.
So he's already locked in on that. You got to believe.
Most
give, I wouldn't say most, but probably slightly more than half the teams I talked to would give Drake Maye the nod at this point. I think because of it's a traits league. And he has got those traits as far as, he looks like Justin Herbert a little bit, the way he throws it, moves around, his size. I'm not saying he's Herbert, but that's the connection people will make. So you're always going to sort of bet on that big-bodied thrower, Trevor Lawrence, that style. Like, it's just, attractive to teams when they're trying to project out 5 to 10 years. But Jayden Daniels, he's got a little bit of that Joe Burrow LSU flavor from you come in hot with that massive 1 year.
Oh yeah.
and you prove what you can do, even if it's a small sample size. He did that. Like no guy has gotten better over a 2-year period than Jayden Daniels. So that has to be accounted for. He's slender, and that's an issue for some teams. I mean, it just is. So it really depends on the team and the flavor.
So while we're on the topic of quarterbacks in this draft class, I want to ask you about JJ McCarthy. Jim Harbaugh said he should be one of, if not the first quarterbacks taken in this draft. That includes a guy like Caleb Williams, where it's like he seems like a lock for one. Do you think JJ McCarthy ends up as a first-round pick? And if so, do you think any teams in the top 10 bite at that value?
I would say he'll be a first-round pick at this stage. That's my estimation right now. Not every scout is sold on that as him being a first-round type guy. They're just like, some are, some aren't. It is a bit torn there. But, I've talked to enough scouts that were like, look, if I was a GM and I was picking top 10 to 12, I would probably do it. Like, I just, he's got – wow. Even though I wouldn't say an overwhelming amount, but a few that I trust have sort of said that, and it caught my eye. So he's got – it's like he was a game manager in college a little bit because of the way they ran the ball and kind of controlled leads. But he doesn't have game manager traits. Like he has high-end ability. Fair. They just didn't always use it. And when they asked him to use it, he delivered. So I think that weighs heavily with some teams.
All right. It's that time. I can't help myself.
Jets.
Okay. Can we please ask about the Jets?
Go ahead.
Yeah. What do you got? All right. I'll do my best. I don't have all the answers, but
this is kind of a boring question, but I have to get this out of the way.
Okay.
What is Zach Wilson going to be traded for? What are we going to get in return? What is that going to look like? Because I heard that we're going to have to tie a pick to it at this point just to get rid of the guy. What do you think about this?
The problem is it's not just the player, it's the salary.
Bless you.
Sorry about that.
Bless you.
No, you're fine.
It's what's the cap hit, like 10 million or something?
I believe it's 11.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the new team wouldn't inherit the signing bonus, like proration of the cap hit, but it's still a decent salary. 4th year for a second overall pick. I don't know if a team wants that money. I don't necessarily think it's acquiring Zach. I think a team would do a 6 or 7 round pick for Zach at this stage and make him the backup. But it's the money is the issue, I think. So look, here my understanding is he's got a short list of teams that he's interested in going to. Now, he's not necessarily in a position to dictate terms right now based on the way things went. He wants to go to an offensive head coach. That's pretty clear in my talks here at the Combine. So you think Rams, you think
that's what I was thinking. 49ers.
I mean, those are two that clearly come to mind and could use a backup. The Rams, you got Mike LaFleur there. I know that it didn't end the best with the Jets, but it's my understanding that they maintained a good relationship and that, Zach Wilson garnered a lot of respect last year for the way he sort of fought through a tough situation, even though the results were not there. Like he did his best and had a couple good games. So I do think that resonated with the league a little bit. That this is not a lost cause. Is he a starter right now? No, he's not. But can he be a backup that maybe takes the Geno Smith route and sits for a while? And, when you get your chance, you play well and maybe get a new contract somewhere? Yes.
Well, I was going to follow up with another question about Zach. So what you're saying is he sort of looked good in the eyes of some people around the league and how he fought through the season. But there isn't
say look good.
Yeah. You didn't say look good. Excuse me. You said
he had flash. He had a few good. He had a few good games. He had a few good games. He had some flashes for sure.
What I was quarter of the Chiefs game, I think, was like the pinnacle.
Yes,
and when he looks good, he looks really good.
Mm-hmm. Yes, he does. But where I'm thinking, and I think where Jeff fans are sort of looking at this situation is from him sort of, I don't want to say quitting on the team, but him not really wanting to go back in, not believing in the situation he was put in. Some of it his fault, a lot of it maybe the ownership. Do you think teams around the league are looking at that, Jeremy, and sort of seeing a kid that maybe mentally just out of sync with what it takes to be a quality NFL quarterback?
Yeah, maybe. I don't have intel on that part of it. I do know there was a lot going on in the building last year.
Got it.
So I'm sure there's some layers to that discussion, and he had his reasons. And look, the Jets did try to shoot down all of that and those notions last year. I do think there was something to it, though. There was something there, but teams would probably give him a pass on that. I don't think that's a hang up. I'll put it that way.
Gotcha.
All right, so let's talk receivers to close because we talked quarterbacks, but there's also some stud receivers in this draft class. And honestly, it kind of reminds me of the 2021 class where we had 3 straight quarterbacks go at the top with Lawrence, Wilson, and Trey Lance. But then there was some great receivers that followed. Do you think this could be a similar class where quarterbacks are the first 3 picks, but then 2-3 years from now, when you're looking back on the class, it's the receivers and the other positions that really stand out.
Probably. It is a good quarterback class. But the receivers, you got these guys up top where you can get 3 really good ones at the top, but then the depth, from what I've heard from coaches, is really good. So, like, if you're picking day 2 and you want to go that route, it's pretty loaded up. And that's kind of been the norm for most of the last 5 years, with a few exceptions. It kind of muddies the market a little bit for some of these veterans. They're looking for $30 million a year. Like, yeah, they're great players, but there are available options elsewhere for a small fraction of that. So it could be remembered for that. It's, certainly like the defense in spots too is really great depth. Some good D tackles, D linemen you can get early. They're going to be really good. So, but I agree with you on the receiver part. Certainly, it's not like last year was more tight ends. Like, so many good tight ends that they sort of suppressed the free agency market.
Mm-hmm.
Where this year, I'd say receivers a factor and all that.
Yeah, Jeremy, last question. This is from Nick Spano, by the way. Nick, Jeremy was wondering, where the heck are you, dude? I mean, you're the guy that communicates with Jeremy and everyone, and he never shows up. I know he had a kid, but whatever.
He's diligent, though. He's
he's on it.
He reaches out. He's on it. He's on the ball. Very organized.
Jeremy, last question. Which team do you think will be the most active in free agency? Which team do you feel like has to go up and beyond their means?
I'm going to look at my list here.
Let's see it.
Right
from the source.
Which is Googling list of NFL teams. Because sometimes I just need to see it.
NFL Insider, everybody.
Yeah, no. But no, like the Chiefs will be active just because they are trying to keep their 2 guys, and they're going to try to sign 2 of the biggest, and L'Jarius Sneed and Chris Jones. Although they very well might trade L'Jarius Sneed. That's sort of been in the works. I look at New England. I mean, they got a ton of cap space. They've been having a lot of talks here. Kyle Duggar, their safety, I think they'll try to re-sign him. And, they'll be in the quarterback market for a veteran in some capacity. They're going to get one, I think. And they could certainly draft Jayden Daniels at 3 as well, or Drake Maye, whichever one's available. So that comes to mind. The Bills are going to be active in a different way. They have a lot of, like, maneuvering they have to do.
They do.
Yeah.
So I think they're going to be restructuring contracts, but I think they still actually want to be active in some areas.
You think the Jets will be restructuring a lot of contracts too, or we don't?
Maybe
Mosley.
We're
in a decent cap
Mosley's
spot,
the one that stands out.
Yeah, Mosley was one of the best business victories last year.
Oh yeah,
like he had a huge number, and they didn't alter it. Like, that's a credit to him. He played so well the year before.
Yeah, it is.
That they kept him at a massive number. I mean, I could see it. But what does he have? 1 year left?
I believe I think it might be
1 year left.
So do you extend him? I don't know at that age if you do. But he's, great for the locker room, great leader, all that. So
if you want to lower his cap,
I don't know if you can restructure him with 1 year left. It might be tricky. They still got some cuts. I'm anticipating. CJ Uzomah probably.
Yep.
They did Laken Tomlinson. I was saying JFM. Listen, I don't root for cutting players. I think that's kind of
not when you're losing Huff potentially.
Yeah, but the thing with JFM is I just feel like he's a top 20 paid edge. His production, he had 3.5 sacks last year. He's talented. He flashes at times, but I don't know. I don't buy JFM. That's just me.
Yeah, he's solid though. He's a solid player.
Yeah, solid player. Yeah,
solid defensive lineman when you need him. Like, they get paid. So I don't know that he's at a clip where you're stretched to have to do something. But to your point, they might. I mean, they're going to do a lot of maneuvering and try to rediscover their edge up front, particularly on offense.
Yeah. Jeremy, last question, really the last question. I always think about this. Are there situations where NFL owners or ownership groups say to their GM, listen, let's not spend a lot of money this year. We're not going anywhere. Let's not try to force something that's not there and just spend
punt year.
Yeah, a couple punt years just to play into this 5 to 10 year plan of winning a Super Bowl. Does that happen often, do you think, or does it happen at all? Because people don't really speak about that much. Like with the Patriots, for example, should they even be spending money this year if they're gonna stink? Why? What's the point? Why not just punt and draft higher? I mean, seriously, right?
The tank over here.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, your point's valid in that fans are so obsessed with salary cap space, right?
Yes. Exactly.
But teams are obsessed with cash. So what you're spending is more important than the cap. Like, look at the Saints every year; they have $80 million of over the cap, right?
Yeah.
And they restructure 6 contracts, and then they're good. Like, you can sort it. The cap is malleable; you can move it around, but the money you can't. So you're either spending it or you're not. Now you have to spend an allocated amount on the NFL salary cap to move into the next year. Like, it's something you have to do. It's a minimum spending. So most teams have to use it. New England's going to have to use it to some extent. But to your point, yeah, I do think in a lot of cases there are front offices that want to be aggressive, but they have to get the spending approved. And if you can't get it approved, then you can't do much. There's some rumors about like the Bucks. They had a lot of guys that could have re-signed. They decided to sort of stand pat. And it was kind of uncertain whether they're going to win 9 games or going to, some people thought they were going to be worse than that. They ended up being a good team, a playoff team. But now they have Mike Evans and Antoine Winfield. They got to try to re-sign right now. And that's tough because, if you would have done it, they would have been a little cheaper in August, But my point is, a lot of times that might be an ownership decision. Like, hey, we don't want to spend that cash right now.
Right.
Where maybe 5 months ago they should have, and they would have saved a couple million.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Jeremy, thank you for joining us. It's been a pleasure. Zach Wilson trade, when it goes probably to the Rams, you heard it here first.
Zach Wilson, Rams jersey. Sending
big
right
number
off.
2.
When you go on SportsCenter next, we'll have a custom Zach Wilson Rams jersey for you. But no, Jeremy, thank you for the time.
Guys.
It's been a blast.
Appreciate
You're
it.
the best. Really
Thanks, guys.
appreciate it.
Yeah, man.
Thank
Of
you.
course.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, anytime.